Okay? Now, very briefly, we now have accounted for 10 of the letters. Now, even this remarkable revelation by the first book on Kabbalah, the Sefer Yetzirah, Book of Formation, declares that the existence, only the beginning of existence, came about via letters, and the immediate result of these letters was the creation of celestial entities, celestial bodies. Now, if that's not saying enough, Abraham the patriarch then goes on to discuss the other aspects of thought, energy, intelligence in our universe. And they are referred to as the 12 constellations or 12 signs of the zodiac. Now, I must assure you, Abraham was not a heretic. I know most of us would never dare believe in astrology because it's against the Jewish religion. But then again, Abraham was before Mount Sinai, so maybe he wasn't Jewish. Possible. But let's assume that maybe he was the first Jew. And he declares that the balance of 12 letters form the basic energy intelligences that govern this universe. Rule the 12 signs of the zodiac. Each month, there is another influence. All starting, all having their very beginning by an energy intelligence called the Hebrew letter. And therefore, again, just to run through it for your own edification, the Hay initiated the creation of the Hebrew month of Nisan, or the sign of the zodiac referred to as Aries, the Vav, Taurus, or Iyar, Zion. And it was not perchance that the revelation of the Bible on Mount Sinai took place when it did, because it could take place under no other influence but Gemini. But we'll get into these things on Monday. Sunday night is reincarnation. We will all bid each other farewell tonight when we return. Okay. Zion was the channel for the creation of Sivan, the Hebrew month of Sivan, and Gemini. Chet, and now you know why the destruction of the temple began in Tammuz, because that letter Chet has an awful meaning to it from one point of view, which is Cancer. And Tet, Leo, the month of Av. Yud, Virgo, the month of Elul. Tav, as we already mentioned, is related to a planet. The letter Lamed was a channel for the unique intelligence for the month of Tishrei, the 7th month of the year. So you can all stop wishing everybody Happy New Year because it's the 7th month of the year. So if you've been saying Happy New Year on Rosh Hashanah, you might have been making a mistake, since the Bible refers to Rosh Hashanah not as the first month of the year, but as the 7th. You all know that. Mm-hmm. No, you don't even know that. Yeah. Are we all Jewish here? Okay. The 7th month of the year, which is Tishrei, the month of Rosh Hashanah, is under the influence, or began with the influence of the letter Lamed, which is Libra. Nun, the letter Nun, over Scorpio or Heshvan. And if you know what Nun means, you know why Heshvan and why. I hope there are no Scorpios in the room. There are. The one Scorpio I know just left. No, but I'll decide I'm going to conclude. Maybe I should do it right now. While we are subjected to the influence of astrological influences, that does not mean that we are governed and we have no choice and that our destiny has already been predetermined. That is incorrect. The fact that these influences register in our lives, our daily lives, is beyond any question. But by the same token, that does not mean that we cannot rise above these influences and become the rulers of our own destiny. Sama, is in Sagittarius and is led. And Sadiq, I've just given you the Ayin. We have 2 more letters to go. It's Tishrei. Nun is Heshvan. Dama is Kislev. Ayin, as I said, was Capricorn. Cool. I'm just trying to think which is a month of Aquarius. I'm sorry, Tzadik. That's right, Tzadik. And Kuf is Adar. Tzadik is Aquarius and Shvat. And Kuf is Adar and Pisces. Okay? Okay, so now we have at least come to an understanding of why there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. The Hebrew alphabet then is the origin of our entire universe and of every known intelligence in this universe. And they all stem from the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Consequently, if we can connect and make use, as Moses did, in the time he was in Egypt, if you recall the slaying of the Egyptian, Rashi, and as well as the Zohar states, that Moses did not slay the Egyptian physically, but through a combination of Hebrew letters. By combining these Hebrew letters, tapping through this combination a power of energy, that just like when we say lightning strikes, raw energy, Moses being on that cosmic level that he was a vehicle by which he could transfer raw energy, like the electric chair, if you might say. And in that way, without physically touching the Egyptian, he slew the Egyptian. And there are many other aspects concerning the letters. But this is, in effect, the power. This is what we're talking about when we discuss that code that was presented on Mount Sinai. No less than when the Zohar asks, at the end of the 5 books of Moses, the Torah, we have a recording of Moses writing his own death. And the Zohar says, how could he write his own death? And Moses died. Because Moses wrote the entire Torah. And how can he record his own death? He was still alive when he wrote that Torah. And so the Zohar makes the revelation again on the power of the Aleph, that what Moses did when he wrote the Torah, he inserted the letters, but not as channels of information. It's almost similar to when one prays and says a lot of words, but they have no meaning. They are not channels for transfer of energy. And so Moses, when he wrote the last chapter of the 5 books of Moses, the way those words appear to us today was not the way he wrote them. He wrote those letters, but not in the form of words as they appear to us today. And when Moses died, the letters by themselves, being energy intelligences, having a purpose of recording Moses' death by themselves, because they are an energy intelligence, just like we do things by ourselves. We're not always coaxed to doing things. Sometimes we even use our head in doing things, right? So these letters, at the very same moment that Moses died, the letters themselves came into formation and described what took place. The power of letters as energy intelligence. Let's see. We have a further indication of the power of the letters is by King David's declaration in Psalm chapter 33, verse 16. By the word of the Lord were the heavens made. The power of the word were the heavens made. Now, you remember yesterday, jokingly, we referred to Spielberg's movie, great movie, I thought, The Raiders of the Lost Ark. But he had kind of told you, he stole that. I told his mother that when I was in California. He really took it from his own. This whole concept. You recall the Jews built the tabernacle in the wilderness. Didn't exactly tell us, or the Bible doesn't make it clear where they received all their tools, the materials. It instructs. If you go into Sinai, you don't find all of those materials that the Bible refers to. And yet, we are told by the Talmud that Bezalel, the ingenious architect, successfully completed the tabernacle because he knew how to combine the letters by which the heavens were created. And by virtue of the letters themselves, the physical, the matter that went into the physical appearance of the tabernacle was created by Bezalel. Now that means we're not discussing Uri Geller's talent of taking material and transforming. We are now discussing taking energy intelligences by virtue of the letters and creating material. We didn't discuss that yet this evening. But that's what the Talmud says. And that's where he got all of this material. And that's how he put it all together by virtue of the letters. Furthermore, the Zohar says, because of the metaphysical nature of the letters, of the Aleph, they can never be destroyed or mutilated. Well, you can burn a letter. What does it mean that the Aleph can never be mutilated or destroyed? If we are discussing the physical letter, in fact, in meditation, we will be discussing on Monday, which is what the prayer book is all about, is to provide us with an image by which we can create energy forces for our own personal benefit. And so these letters are only the dyes by which energy intelligence are formulated, are created. Remember, from the letters, from the energy intelligence of the letters came Saturn. You dare not forget that point. So Abraham made that very clear. So if we question now, how did Bezalel create the tabernacle from material that did not exist? He created the material. The same way as today, we understand that something called DNA is a code, a genetic code, contains all of the physical matter of an individual that will appear year after year, maybe until 120 years. From what? From something called a DNA that contains the entire genetic code. Something called DNA, a substance, contains the entire genetic code. It produces an individual precisely as he appears. Are we then to question the power of the alphabet because that is not demonstrable as yet? Maybe we're a little ahead of our time. Maybe we don't have that full confidence. As we said before, golden technique has taken us over. We don't know how to add 1 and 1 anymore without a computer. So we are taking a back seat to the physicalness of this world, but that doesn't mean all of us have to take that avenue. We have a choice. We have a choice. And to demonstrate the eternal nature of the alphabet, the Zohar states, when the tablets were shattered, time of the golden calf, the letters themselves flew upwards. The tablets have become a symbol of power. The tablets were placed in that ark. Because we are told the eternal intelligent life force became manifested by virtue of the alphabet, says the Zohar. And in this case, the stone became flexible to the point that the tablets could be rolled up as a scroll. The stone, tablets were originally stone, folded up as a scroll. How can stone fold up? It's not rubber, it's not paper, it's stone. But the energy intelligence of the letters that were inscribed on those tablets controlled physical matter. And not physical matter controlled and limited the internal intelligence of the power of the Aleph. There is a custom today, I should say today, I guess. It's a custom that started a long time ago. In fact, it's mentioned in the Bible. That the insertion of a letter or the insertion of a name to an individual, let's say, who is seriously ill, hopefully can bring a cure. Now, what is really meant by the change of a name? Or where is this power of a name or letter changing indicated in the Bible itself? If you recall, if you've read the Kabbalah for the layman, that Abraham knew that he and Sarah would never have a child together. Abraham, states the Zohar, was the first astrologer who was completely and thoroughly knowledgeable in all aspects of astrology. And when he did his own chart, realized that he and Sarah could never bear a child. Now, you remember when we discussed the aspect of returning back in time, parallel universes, parallel levels of consciousness. That means the grandfather paradox was no longer a paradox last night. When Abraham read his chart, he was Abraham. And then along came the Lord and said, include the letter Hey in your name. And your name no longer will be Abraham, but it will be Abraham. And Sarai, no longer Sarai, but there was an inclusion of the letter Hey to replace the Yud, and she became Sarah. And by virtue of inserting this letter Hey, a new chart developed. There was a new rebirth of Abraham and Sarah. And so while the stars did compel, and while the chart did indicate that they would not have a child together, by the insertion of the letter Hey, they achieved another level of consciousness. They were at another parallel universe. And so what the stars originally compelled no longer held true for this new Abraham. A remarkable revelation. But what is more important is the fact that this change came about by the insertion of a letter in his name. And it is not coincidental that the letter Hey was the letter that created the first month of the Hebrew calendar. Nisan, as I mentioned before. Nisan. Hey, a powerful letter that can make changes in one's own destiny. Now, there are two kinds of consciousness. There is an altered state of consciousness and what I like to refer to as a robotic state of consciousness. Unfortunately, for most of us, we are in that state. And as I mentioned last night, Einstein was the typical example of robotic consciousness. Now, what does that mean exactly? We discussed the chariots, people who were born in this terrestrial realm, like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Aaron, and Joseph, and David. They were chariots. What did that mean? That the seven forces, seven spirot, seven energy intelligence, which are subdivided into infinite numbers of energy intelligences, they were chariots. Now, what does that mean they were chariots? They were the connecting link between the metaphysical realm and the physical realm. They brought these energy intelligences into a physical manifestation in our realm. They were connected between the two worlds. They were robotic consciousness. They were born to be the connection. They were born to reveal that kind of energy intelligence. Einstein, for whatever reason that no one asked, why him and not somebody else, revealed his theory of relativity, which was long ago known to the Ari, because he constantly refers to in Hebrew as Yichasi. Everything is relative, depending in which framework you operate. This was long mentioned in his Eitz HaChaim. But it required someone to demonstrate that the on a physical and practical level. What the Ari wrote 400 years ago, unfortunately, was known only by the select few. He was a channel, Einstein, for the revelation of the information that he brought to this world. It was not through his own efforts. It was not through any labor that this kind of revelation came about. He was there like those chariots before him. The time came when that information was to be revealed in this terrestrial realm. For most of us, we can achieve, and in fact, proof of it was that at the end, when some of the new ideas of quantum, whatever that means, came into being, he refused to recognize what all other scientists agreed, the quantum idea, that everything is interrelated, everything is interconnected, and that almost the determinism of this universe disappears because someone in China can affect me without an apparent cause and effect, was something he refused to recognize. Because he was fixed in his ideas. He was robotic all the way. However, most people in this universe have free will. That means while we might be under the influence of particular cosmic intelligence, in no way does that prevent us from achieving an altered state of consciousness. That means through labor or through the aspect of rega that we discussed last night, the act of compassion. If you're looking for an instant cure, if you're looking for an instant path to altered states of consciousness, here is one word: rega, compassion. Restrict, and you are assured of achieving an altered state of consciousness. You are assured of seeing things today that you did not see yesterday. The 7 individuals that we mentioned, the enormous amount of ink that the Bible spends on telling the story, of each individual. Again, it's a story. However, as mentioned before, these stories are another example of a codified position on the part of the Bible to permit us to understand the energy intelligences that rule and govern this world. The story of Abraham personifies a good individual. In Hebrew, chesed. Share. Share. The stories concerning Abraham was merely to indicate to us that the Sfirat Hesed is an energy intelligence of the right kind of sharing. Isaac loved Esau. I'm sure for most of you that is most revolting. How could Isaac loved Esau, who at the age of 13 murdered Nimrod. And we're discussing Isaac, a chariot, one who could see. How could he have loved Esau more than Jacob? And the Zohar goes on to say that's a coded message. Esau is left column, negativity, desire to receive for oneself alone. From the klipah, or unclean column. But there was an affinity, states the Bible, between Isaac and Esau, because Isaac is also symbolic of the left column, desire to receive. He desired to receive for the sake of sharing, but nevertheless, an energy intelligence of minus, of negativity. So that story that doesn't seem plausible when considering energy intelligence as what the story represents, we have a kind of meaning to why the Bible goes ahead and portrays a story that on the surface doesn't appear to have any validity. And then we come to Jacob. Jacob is the central column. Central column. He was the chariot that brought to this world a force that can bring together a harmonious right and left. And then we have three others. Moses, again. Netzach, meaning right column. Hesed, left column. And Yesod, central. Which leads us now into another subject, which for whatever reason remain very obscure and sometimes downright mystifying.
Repeat the three.
Moses was Netzah, the chariot of Netzah,
Yeah.
victory. Aaron, Hod,
Oh, okay. It's okay with that.
and Joseph, foundation or Yesod.
Yes.
The Star of David, that appears on all Jewish flag in Israel. That's our banner. But ask the Israeli why. Not to his credit can he provide an answer. Furthermore, it is not called Star of David, but it has become Star of David. It's a corruption. The Hebrew word for that symbol is called Magen David. Magen does not mean star. The Hebrew word for star is kochav. And we'll soon get to the star, the importance of that star. It looks like a star, that is correct. But neither the Zohar or the Talmud refers to that symbolism as the Star of David, but the shield of David. And for what has now been said, we understand that the proper interpretation of that symbolism is the shield of David, because that is the protection of the Jew that has not been with him for 2,000 years. We have two triads in that star, two triads, two triangles, an upper and a lower, And the reason there is an upper and there is a lower is because they each represent an energy intelligence. The Am Segula, the nation of Segol, the nation that can manipulate the three forces of this universe into an energy force. The reason for two triads is because one is metaphysical, one is potential, and one is manifested. And that is the difference that is the reason for these two triads. The one representing Hesed, Vora, and Verit, which is potential, because everything in this universe must first originate as potential, same as with a human being. Nothing becomes physically manifest, physically expressed, provided there is a prior potential thought. So it is with all forms of energy intelligences. There must be a prior metaphysical establishment of that energy, a prior potential state of that energy. That is the upper triad. The lower triad is the physical expression, is the manifestation of that energy intelligence. And so the six Sfirot, representing the Star of David, is the shield of David. That is the shield. That is our protection. Shield, Magen. And consequently, whatever we refer to that has any significance within, quote, the Jewish religion is not a religion, but a system by which the Jew can become a master of his own destiny, without which he is totally governed by forces beyond his control. And therefore, there are two parts to everything in this universe. As the human being has two parts to himself, the internal, external, so is it true for all celestial bodies. Jupiter has its external physical expression and its internal. Now, if we can connect the internal aspect, then we can control the mechanism and influence of Jupiter. If all we can see and observe, as astrologers seem to function in dealing with the exterior of these forces, then we have no control. It has all been predestined. And when we asked yesterday why the Creator chose no other precept, no other mitzvah than the sanctification of the new moon as to be the first precept that the Jews received in Egypt, our answer is because when we discuss or when we deal with a concept of a new nation, and that's the way the Exodus is portrayed, the birth of a nation. I never understood that, frankly. Birth of a nation. Jews were there before. What happened before and afterwards? And we even discussed yesterday, there are 4 instances that the Jews said, I was happier in Egypt than out of Egypt, constantly complaining how good it was. What do we mean by the birth of a nation? Corruption. What happened at that moment was the Jew was provided with the information you were provided here this evening, that you are no longer governed by the metaphysical DNA that governs this world, by those metaphysical factors that control our movements on the road, that we consider as having no control over. We consider ourselves governed, and robotic enterprises are DNA physical and DNA metaphysical, because there is a plan. Because as we proceed down that road, we observe an accident, and there but by the grace of God go I. Had I been there one moment before, it would have been me. There is a plan. There is a master plan. Just as there is that micro plan for the individual that determines the physical structure and nature of his body, so is there a metaphysical DNA. And that is, frankly, the reason why Yom Kippur is even observed. The purpose of Yom Kippur, I guess unbeknownst to most of you, is for one purpose and one purpose alone: to master the metaphysical DNA, to master your environment, to control those incidents and events that have not yet taken place but have already been placed in that chart, the master plan, going down that road, whether there will be an accident, God forbid, or not. I have control. Yom Kippur, without getting into the details of it, without getting into the kavanot that are required to change not only your own immediate environment, but to change this entire quantum universe. I am not affected by that fellow in China, who, for whatever reason, can connect with me. That's what quantum is all about. Everything is interconnected. Everything is interrelated. We have no power. There's an unseen enemy force out there. And so the Jew was told that from today on, you are being provided with this information. Now you can be the master rather than the slave. And that's what the Exodus is all about. They were not slaves. They constantly remind us as we go through that Bible, one incident after another, how great and beautiful and wonderful it was in Egypt. Who says that Exodus was bad or good? That's what every precept of the Bible is about. It is not religion. It has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with a method that on Mount Sinai is provided for the Jew to control and master his own destiny, to have a chance in this universe, rather than be the effect of things all around.